But fortunately, 99% of the time, this is a very easy problem to fix. Hey guys, Jake from 8020 Automotive here. Today we are talking about P0500 fault codes. A P0500 fault code will read vehicle speed sensor malfunction, and it might have the letter A in parentheses along with it as well. A vehicle speed sensor malfunction points us to an issue with the sensor that measures how fast your vehicle is going. So this seems like a very simple and easy problem, but there are a few caveats to it because depending on what type of vehicle you have, you might have a different system that actually measures how fast your vehicle is going. So there are a few different systems that measure vehicle speeds. And so before we get into causes and where to look to fix a P0500 fault code, let's go ahead and talk about how cars measure vehicle speed and the two different types of systems that are used. Older vehicles, mostly from the 1990s, the early 2000s, and older than that, will have an actual physical vehicle speed sensor that is located either on the back of the transmission or on the transfer case. And what this does is this measures the speed that the output shaft rotates at to determine how fast your vehicle is moving. That's a very simple system, and that makes diagnosing a P0500 a little bit easier because you actually have a vehicle speed sensor. But to complicate things a little bit further, from the early 2000s and onwards, manufacturers transitioned to an ABS-based system for measuring vehicle speed. So what we have now is wheel speed sensors that are located on every wheel on your vehicle, and those wheel speed sensors are tied into the ABS system. So we're getting speed readings at every single wheel, and that's predominantly used for the anti-lock braking system, but it is now also used for measuring speed because measuring speed at each of our wheels is a lot more accurate than measuring speed at the output shaft on the transmission. The accuracy of our vehicle speed is a lot better with the ABS-based system, but of course now we have a few other components that could go wrong or that we could have problems with. This is an important distinction because both older and newer vehicles can get a P0500 fault code. A P0500 fault code basically just means that the vehicle speed data that's being sent to the ECM or the car's computer is inaccurate or is not being received at all. So in our case of a P0500 code, that could be because your vehicle speed sensor is bad, or it could be because you have an issue with one of your 4 ABS sensors in newer vehicles. It's also worth noting that there are some older vehicles that do have ABS and ABS wheel speed sensors, but those are specific to the ABS system. So it's important to understand which one you have, because from here, what we're going to go ahead and do is talk just briefly about some of these symptoms and signs that you'll get along with a P0500. Now, you might think, oh, okay, if my speed sensor's wrong, my dashboard's going to display the wrong speed. And yes, that is true, but there are also a number of other things that your car and your car's other systems and computer use speed for. Interestingly enough, when your car is reporting the wrong speed, you're going to get a lot of interesting symptoms that come along with it. Your transmission uses vehicle speeds to determine shift points, and so you might get erratic shifting, hard shifting, random shifting at times where your engine shouldn't be shifting. It also is heavily tied into your ABS system, especially if you have an ABS-based vehicle speed sensor. So you could get an ABS warning light on your dashboard or traction control warning lights. You could have issues with how your vehicle is idling and the idle control for it. And then of course, in addition to that, you might have a bouncy speedometer or a speedometer that's not working at all, that just always shows 0. So ultimately, issues with your speedometer are probably one of the easiest ways to recognize it, in addition to this fault code, of course, but those are a few of the other things that you'll notice. With that being said, let's go ahead and talk about the most common causes of P0500 fault codes. On older vehicles with a actual vehicle speed sensor, when you have a P0500 code, 99% of the time is going to be the actual vehicle speed sensor itself. It's usually mounted onto the transmission or transfer case, and so it's located in a relatively easily accessible place underneath the vehicle where it's prone to catching water, dirt, debris, and various other things that can ultimately wear down on the sensor over time. Something that can help point you to the vehicle speed sensor is that alongside a P0500, you might also get a P0720 or a P0722 fault code. But if it's not the sensor itself, you could have a bad fuse, or you could have a bad instrument cluster. Now, if you have a bad instrument cluster, you're probably not going to have any of these other erratic driving problems, but your instrument cluster might just always show 0 on it. But if the rest of the car is running fine, that could be a sign that it's the instrument cluster and not the actual vehicle speed sensor, because if the speed sensor itself is wrong, then you are going to notice rough shifting and other types of problems like that. On your ABS-based systems, we have 4 wheel speed sensors, and those wheel speed sensors are going to be the most common culprits of a P0500. The likelihood of that is slightly higher in the sense that there's 4 of these instead of just 1 vehicle speed sensor on the older systems. These sensors sit right around the wheel of your vehicle, and so they are also prone to catching dirt, debris, water, and all other sorts of things that can cause the sensor to fail early. If you have a bad wheel speed sensor, you will likely get a fault code for it, and it will be a C005X fault code. But again, you might have to read specifically within the ABS module to see those. If it's not a bad wheel speed sensor, it's possible that you have a faulty ABS control module, or you have some other issue with the CAN bus communications of your vehicle. The CAN bus is basically how all the systems in a vehicle speak to each other, and basically what happens is these wheel speed sensors report back to the ABS module, and the ABS module sends that around to all of the other systems via a CAN message. So if you have an issue with your CAN bus communication somewhere along the way, you could have this fault code as well, but that would be a very rare likelihood. You would probably get a U0121 or some U type of code. So with that being said, coming down to diagnosing the problem here, if you've got a vehicle speed sensor, you can check fuses, make sure there's no issues with fuses, but if it's not a fuse, you're gonna just wanna go ahead and replace the vehicle speed sensor. 99% of the time, that's gonna be the fix there. On your ABS systems, again, 99% of the time, it's going to be a bad wheel speed sensor. You can do a little bit more diagnostics on the wheel speed sensors. If you have a more advanced scan tool, you can actually go into the ABS system and you can look at the wheel speeds coming from every single wheel, so all 4 of them, so you can tell which sensor is bad. You can go and drive and see which one's showing 0 or isn't matching the other 3 sensors. Ultimately, you'll want to go ahead and read codes within the ABS system to determine which one it is, so that you're not just replacing all 4 of them anyways. If you do have a U code, that means you have an issue with CAN bus communications or with the ABS module itself, then you'll want to look into your fuses, your ground straps, anything electrical related. But again, that would be very rare cases, and a lot of times your P0500 fault code is going to be coming from the fact that you have a U code, and the U code isn't coming from the P0500, if that makes sense. So ultimately, we do have 2 different systems here, but they're both very simple. It's either the vehicle speed sensor or a wheel sensor. Modern vehicles just have adopted a new system, but fortunately, 99% of the time, this is a very easy problem to fix, and wheel speed sensors and vehicle speed sensors are usually pretty easy to DIY replace. So I hope this helped you solve the problems that you're having with your vehicle. If you guys found this video helpful, please click the like button, subscribe to our channel, and stay tuned for all of our future diagnostic content that's aimed at helping you save money.